Hello, and welcome to another episode of Suzan Stroud Speaks, where I enjoy sharing my thoughts, opinion, and insight on diverse topics. Chances are, if I'm speaking it, you've been thinking it. So let's get started with today's show. Today, I have the awesome privilege and honor to share this platform with the most handsomest, loyal, loving, and caring man that I know, and that's my husband, John Stroud. Ooh.
Thank you.
In addition to being a loving husband, partner, friend, and father, he's also an author and entrepreneur. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Especially great to have the honor of being on your initial breakthrough show.
Yes, I'm so excited. If you guys, for those of you who don't know me, my husband and I, we have been married for 29 years. And for 29 years, I've always been dragging him into things that I do. And the great thing about him is that he goes willingly. He'll cut his eye at me, but he'll go willingly. So here he sits today. So let's just give the listeners a little bit of background about us, John. Tell them how we met.
I think we met at Wendy's drive-thru, right?
Yes, we did.
I just gotten out of the military. I got at ETS in 1983. I'm dating us really good now. And just across town, I think it was the only Wendy's in the area in New Haven, Connecticut. So being a Wendy's fan, even till today, I'd go over there. I'd make maybe once or twice a week. And not you, but your girlfriend was in the drive-thru window. And I guess I didn't know it then, but I was being stalked before the term was phrased.
I'm grasping for my pearls, listeners. I'm grasping for my pearls.
Yeah.
And so for me to finish the story, I used to see him coming through the drive-thru, and he had this red Regal, right? It was a red Regal,
right.
And he had a license plate, and it was called the Witch. That was the name of his car.
The Red Witch.
The Red Witch, I'm sorry. And I always loved the fragrance coming from his car. And I was like, oh, my God, his cologne smells so good. Like, cologne just melts me. And one day, a friend of mine happened to ask. She said, oh, she loves your cologne. And he was real sarcastic. And he said, it's not cologne. It's an air freshener.
Look, I wasn't being sarcastic. I was just being truthful. It wasn't. I didn't have a cologne. I was my air freshener.
Oh, he could have just said thank you, people. He could have just said thank you. But, here we are. We have been together going on 34 years, and we have been married 29 years. And so it has been a great journey. And one of the things that I really enjoy, actually, we both enjoy talking about it in our different circles, as we enjoy talking about relationships. We enjoy talking about marriage and family and among other things. But before we get started, John, I mentioned here that you were an author. Just kind of share with us maybe one of your favorite books that you've authored. I know you have 1,000.
Yeah, well, I have an eclectic interest category. So it ranges from everything from astrophysics to science, life sciences like biology, zoology. But a lot of things of late have a great core interest in theology and religious fiction.
I'm going to tell you, listeners, he is so smart. I was turned on by his brain, too. Once I got to know him, I was like, ooh, this guy is smart. And here, wait a minute, I have to share this part. So when we were dating, and he would call me because he lived in another state, and I lived in our home state, and we started pen paling and writing. When he started calling me, he'd always use these big words. I didn't know those big words. I'd always be on the phone with him with a dictionary just so I would be able to respond. So there you have it. I am not embarrassed to say that I do not know a lot of big words, but we love to laugh about that. But now today, John and I are going to talk about something we both thoroughly enjoy. That's each other and our marriage.
Oh, yeah.
And our topic today is know what you will do and what you won't do. Yikes. We're going to be as transparent as possible. I'm sure to some of you listeners, this may seem like a weird topic. But for us, we found it to be a vital part of where we are today. So let's get started. I'm very excited, John. Thank you so much. So just to kind of start off, what were you looking for? I know now what you were looking for, but just for the sake of our listeners, what were you looking for in a life mate?
Well, this seems to shock everyone that asked me this. And I was looking for a single mother. I was looking for someone that was a single mother.
Wow.
And the reason for that is most of my younger years, I was an introvert. So there was a lot of things I didn't partake in, like drinking, smoking. I wasn't a super Christian. I just didn't partake in anything that to me didn't make any sense life-wise. So I didn't go out to a lot of parties. I had good friends that drank and smoked, but they respected me enough to not try to enforce that on me or have it, affect our relationship.
It's a good group of folks.
Oh yeah, you can't find them. You can't find many like that today. So I was looking for a single mother because there were things that I knew from my experience with my friends and family that a single mother was ready. She had a child, and most of them at that time were ready to have a life. They wanted a home, a husband, the car. They wanted jobs and careers. So in order to forego all the dating woes that a lot of my friends were going through, and I didn't go out and party anyway. A single mother, I thought, was a surefire shortcut way to, find my wife to be, and it worked.
Well, when we met, I didn't have a child because I was still in high school, and he was maybe 2 years fresh out of the Army, I believe, 2 years out of the Army. And so I was just this little high school chick that, I'm like, you got this older guy that's wooing you, that's a really big thing right there. But when we did start dating, I did actually have a child, and I think she was less than a year old when we started dating. And so I find that very interesting that you say when you wanted to find a single mother, because at that point at that point in a person's life that they're ready to settle down, they're looking for a husband. Is that always the case, do you think, or maybe it's just rare occasions and you just kind of have to find the right one?
I would say today that's very rare, very irregular that you find a single mother with the mindset that she's ready to settle down and have to, there's a lot of dynamics that are going on now in today's society that I'm sure we're going to touch on that weren't present when you and I were dating. So I'm sure we'll get down this slope.
Yes, we will. But
things have changed.
I know for me, I was looking for someone who shared similar qualities as my father. My father was, he was a strong man. He was a pastor, and I wasn't looking for a pastor. I just definitely was not looking for that because I was just not trying to do that. But, he was kind, nurturing, loving, and his primary goal was to take care of his family, and that was important to me. So I think that for those of you who are out there listening, whatever your reasons are and what you're looking for in a life mate, just make sure you understand what you're looking for, and when you do meet up with that person, that they have all of the prime qualities that you're looking for. Sometimes we're not gonna get the dream boat that we were looking for, because I was actually looking for like somebody who was an athlete and all this other stuff, and my husband is none of those things, and I am so grateful that he chose me to be his wife. So, John, why were those qualities important to you?
Being an introvert, of course, there are a lot of things that you, due to your mental state, that you don't allow yourself to participate in. So martial arts was a huge part of my life. My mother forced me to go to martial arts in 1974, forced me to start. Because as the oldest of the family, she thought I should be able to take care of my brothers and sisters, growing up in the bad streets of New Haven, Connecticut. So there were times I played hooky. So a lot of things, we find as people, and especially as men, are a compilation of what we've experienced and lived through in our youth that would make us and formulate us as men when we grow older. But those qualities were important to me as a single mother because the woman I was looking for, the woman that was ready to settle down, was a woman that was focused primarily on family. And that's what I was focused on. I went from the military. I didn't date that often. Straight from the military. 2 years later, met you. And then, I was ready to settle down. I mean, what else? I didn't have anything else to do but, career goals. And my career goal at that time was a, government employee.
Yes, he had some very good government jobs, I must say. For me, it was important. I grew up in a peaceful environment, and I wanted my children to experience what I experienced. And so that was one of the great qualities that I was looking for as well. Now, why do you think it's important for couples to establish boundaries in the beginning stages of the relationship? So, for example, I know for me, and this is really how this whole thing got started, because I'm always having conversations with people, and I'm saying, you need to know what you will and what you won't do.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I remember, and I don't even know at what point in our conversation our relationship that I had this conversation with you, but I made sure I said, well, I don't like to iron, but I will. I don't like to do dishes, but I will. I don't like to clean the bathroom, but I will. I don't like to do housework, but I will. And it worked out that those are things that you absolutely love to do. And so now, 29 years later, if those things aren't done, it's not a major problem for us. So why do you think it's important for couples to establish these boundaries?
I mean, that's the core of what, my mom used to always say, and I'm sure all the other listeners understand this saying, you don't know who you're with until you're behind closed doors, until you're living with them. And you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So it's important to understand who you're with, who you're spending your time with. I mean, and today, that's needed more so than ever because a lot of the exchange is artificial. It's over social media, as we know.
So true.
Yeah, so, those boundaries, it's important to get down the nitty-gritty of who we are, and that can only be done through prima facie contact, getting to know that person. One of the things you neglected to say was one of the things you didn't like to do was to take out the trash. Remember that?
Oh, my God, yes.
Yeah, we have a 7-year trigger with our trash day. I tell people, most people have a 7-year itch. Suzan and I had a 7-year trash itch. But I'll go into that later if we have time.
Trash itch. I didn't even know we had this itch, but if he says we did, we did.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go ahead and
tell
dive
us,
into
please.
it now. Okay.
Tell us.
Again, Suzan, when we first got married, there were things that, of course, she, that we both said that we liked and we didn't like and we didn't do whatever. Well, one of her things she didn't like to do was trash. She felt that was a man's job because her entire life, her father took out the trash. And I'm like, well, that's fine because in my life, my mom, I had to take out the trash. So it was good. So we had this long, tall kitchen trash can, with the trash bag inside of it. So how I would take out the trash is that each week, once the trash bag got kind of semi-full, where the top wouldn't go back on it, I would lift the trash bag out of the trash can and set it beside the trash can so that I could maximize the capacity of the bag for that last day and then set it out on Friday or Thursday night. Well, she couldn't stand walking by that trash can, seeing the trash bag sitting outside the trash can. To her, it was full when I took it out and set it up. It was full. To me, it was full after I maximized that last little foot of the bag space and then tied up and took it out to the larger trash can. So we got into this huge 7-year debate. And the debate was, look, that's my responsibility. Stay out of my stuff.
I needed to just mind my business. And, and that is so interesting that you would bring that point up because when you connect with someone and you know that this is someone that you want to be your life partner, you have to understand how each other grew up.
Absolutely. Because
we grew up in different types of households, whereas not that we practice waste in my house, but I'm a wasteful person, whereas you weren't. And so we kind of had those challenges. And so, one of the other important things where I think boundaries need to be established is raising children. And I think that we did very well with that.
I believe so, too. And again, it's because we had a great deal of communication. When we were dating, there weren't any cell phones that, weren't a millionaire to own. And there were no social media platforms. So everything we did had to be over telephone or face-to-face.
Right.
And this is the thing that we miss today in public, in dating. And there's a difference between dating and courting. Dating is just going out on the town with your friend and having fun. There's no seriousness yet. You're just having fun.
Exactly.
Courting is when this person means something to you and you both are exclusively seeing just each other.
That's a good point.
It's during that courting phase you find out just when you're asking the serious questions. Suzan and I were talking about raising children, whether or not to spank our children, whether or not to have our children sleep in bed. We were talking about those conversations before we were married.
Before we got married, which made it so much easier when the time came.
Absolutely.
Because it absolutely helps to understand where your spouse stands on certain things. And, a couple of other things that I wanted to just kind of point out, we may not have time to elaborate, but, entrepreneurship and continuing education.
Absolutely.
I know when I met you, that was a big thing for you. And throughout the years, you have ventured into so many different things because your primary goal was for your family to be financially free.
That's
so
right.
whichever spouse is dabbling into entrepreneurship, the other person has to understand. And sometimes continuing education comes in, because I remember when you were doing IT, you had to go to school to get certified for certain things. So, you have to make sure that the person that you're choosing to be your life partner is going to be able to understand, and there's not any friction.
That's a very important point, because when you met me, I was a soldier and a mailman. So, but you didn't know that deep inside of me was an author, entrepreneur, and rogue scientist.
Didn't know that,
did not know.
Didn't know that.
It's my job to relay as much of that of who I am to you as possible. Now, that's not something men do very well. It just isn't.
They don't.
But it's the woman's fault. Women, it's been proven scientifically that you all, of course, are more intelligent than we are. You use, about 1,200 more words a day than men do. So that brain capacity gives you the ability not to win arguments, but to chisel down into the person that you're interested in and find out who they are at the core. That's the woman's responsibility, to find out who it is I'm dating. Because when you're dating a guy, or it goes into courting, you're telling the entire cosmos, this is the person I want to be around. So if you direct energy towards, say, some nebulous wedding instead of finding out who this person is,
right?
That's no one's fault but yours. It's not God's. It's not Dr. Phil's, and it's not
It's your responsibility.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I think we intentionally, and we agreed on this when we started dating. I know for me, well, you ended up agreeing. You thought it was kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be with someone who was opposite of me.
Right.
And you were like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, well, no, because if you're opposite, that means that you have an opportunity. There's so much more room to grow and to learn. And I'm going to tell you, I've learned so much from him, because I would have never, ever thought to write a book. And I've actually written 2 books. I'm not successful because I don't want to be. And my second book is The Life Diet 365.
And don't forget your poetry book.
Yes, Sunflower Poetry.
That's 3. And
so, I would have never done those things. But when you're hooking up with a life partner, the person you're with has to bring out the best in you, and they have to make you a better person. So just a couple other things we're going to touch on: caring for aging parents. Those are conversations people need to have, and relocation, because he was living in one state and I was living in another state, and it took me 3 years to make the decision to move.
Absolutely.
But it was something I was considering that I was willing to do.
Right.
And then here's the other taboo thing: frequency of sex. I have been in conversation with some of my female friends, and they just tell me, oh, he wants sex all the time, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, some people think that heavy sex just happens in the beginning of the relationship. But, if you're dating someone, it could be male or female, because I know both sides, you have to make sure that this person, if they have a high sex drive, are you going to be able to accommodate that?
Absolutely.
Did you want to say something on that, John?
Well, you went through several things. It's caring for aging parents. That's something that, of course, goes back to choosing the right mate. Because in today's economy, you have to make sure you choose a mate. Every animal on the planet has a systematic, proven tool as to how they choose their mate. Every animal we see on the planet, we walk out, we see the sparrows, birds, ants, bees, worms. They're still here after hundreds of millions of years because they're successful in how they've chosen their mates and how they propagate. Human beings are the only planet, or the only organisms that live outside of our known our functionality. And unfortunately, we've adapted well to that. But in caring for our aging parents, that comes back to you and or your spouse or person having the proper education to understand what the economy looks like, so that you're going to be able to care for the aging parents.
Absolutely.
That boils down to, like a lot of things boil down to the United States, is the money. So do you have an education? Is that person going to be able to, financially create a household where you're going to be able to care for your aging parent? Because guess what? The one in the family of your siblings who has the best education, the best job, guess who's going to be caring for that aging parent?
It's going to fall on that person.
Exactly.
Just want to kind of get through, because we're almost out of time. This is such great dialogue, and I knew that it would be when I would sit across from you, because I know what it's like living with you. How important do you think it is for each person to know the deal breakers and consequences of breaching those deal breakers?
That is vitally, vitally important. Everything has rules. Everything in the universe has rules. And when those rules and those boundaries are understood, whether it's in business transactions, government policies, laws, and in relationships, everybody on both sides of the table are happy. You have to know. I mean, Dr. Phil did a great segment years ago where he brought in these hard rockers from back in the old days. I mean, these hard rockers strung out on dope, drugs, sex, and everything. And he brought them on the premise that they had successful marriages. And he wanted to know why. And he found out the crux why was that these wives weren't their groupies. These wives set in borders and they set in ultimatums that, look, I didn't follow you. I don't worship you. This is what I'm expecting of this marriage. If you deviate from this, I'm gone and the kids are gone.
It's a wrap.
And these guys sobered up. They got help. They got detoxified. And they became straight and stalwart husbands. And that is the caveat of the entire conversation. It's women that create good husbands and good mates.
Absolutely.
Men aren't just out there smart. Y'all give us too much credit, and that's where the problems are. But women, you have to have these ultimatums and these goals have to be set up front. They have to be no nonsensical. I'm not saying be a drill sergeant about it, but the man, your mate, has to know where you stand and where you will not stand.
And you have to stick to them. Yeah. And and it's so crucial because when you have deal breakers, it allows your mate to know what hurts you.
Yes.
Which I think is so key.
Yes.
It will also cause them to think twice before they act. So
Absolutely.
Before you step out and do anything, and it doesn't have to always be, cheating. It could be someone that has a drug addiction, alcohol addiction, or spending addiction. You know this before you act.
And can I add one more thing? I'm sorry. This needs to be in place before sex, because sex for the woman creates an emotional tie that will sometimes is her weak point, her Achilles heel, that allows her to take stuff from people.
And it will skews her judgment. I'm so glad that you brought that up. That is such a good point, John. And then it's no shock to the other person if the relationship is dissolved. Absolutely. Because you've already established this in the beginning. So it is just so crucial. And these are conversations that we've had. Now, we're not sitting here suggesting that we've had a perfect marriage for the entire 29 years and we did not have any road bumps. We did not have any infidelities, and we're very fortunate about that. And it was because we understand and we understood the boundaries that were put in place and the deal breakers. And when you love and care for your spouse that much, or the person that you're planning to make your life partner, you won't do anything to hurt that person. So deal breakers are absolutely key. So just before we go, share what you think are signs of a good relationship and or a bad relationship, and what advice would you offer to the listeners?
The first and foremost sign of a good relationship is the chase. Men love to chase. We're wired to chase. We're hunters. We're hunter-gatherers. We love to chase. In today's society, that's almost gone. Our roles in society have reversed, and one of my books talks about that, where women are now chasing. And so if women are chasing, why are we asking why are there no good men? So the chase, the guy has to be, if he is not chasing you, don't pursue him. If you're chasing him, bad. Here's something a lot of women don't understand either. If a man will walk down the aisle with you and not want to, he will put on the tux.
He sure will.
He will put on the tux. He will gather together his best friends for best men, and he will walk down that aisle with you and not want to. So the chase is the best sign of a healthy relationship. And if he's chasing you, make sure you avail yourself of all the technology has to offer today by means of background check.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, all of this stuff has to happen before sex. Look, have fun. Don't rush relationships. That's what dating is about. Today, I see children in elementary school skipping dating. They shouldn't be dating in the first place. But they're skipping dating, and they're rolling right over into serious relationships that border on being engaged. That is insanity.
It's just so much, and there's just so much media that's coming at them. And, the key is, there are so many things that John and I can sit here and talk about just on this point alone, but use your common sense. If something doesn't look right, it doesn't sound right, it doesn't feel right, then it's not right. Don't try to make it, because men, you can't change a man. The only thing you can do is change yourself. And as you change yourself, it changes that person.
Yes.
And if that man really wants to be your life partner, he will make the changes. So This has been some great dialogue. John, do you have any closing thoughts for our listeners? Just a brief recap or just something you didn't get out?
Oh, no, I just want to make sure, let everybody know. I mean, our climate, our social dynamic, our climate has changed in America. We don't really mean to frighten you, but to equip you with how to have a happier, fuller life. We realize it's different than the decades ago, 3 decades ago when we were dating, but the tools here are still here to avail yourself of to make sure that your safety is first and foremost, especially for women. I mean, there are a lot of predators out there, and predators are here because predators are always smarter than prey. So have fun with friends, but the ultimate, the most important segment in all of this is your safety. So just have fun and be safe.
And my husband is all about safety, and so that's another show. But John, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to share with us today, and hopefully you listeners out there, you were able to glean and gain some nuggets from this. And to keep up with future episodes, be sure to click the subscribe button and share with your family and friends. And remember, every day is a great day. You get to choose how it goes. Take care.